Hello, everyone. This is Ed Brenniger, and welcome to the Eddy Network podcast. And my guest today is Celine Schillinger, a author, an award-winning author of a fantastic leadership book called Dare to Unlead. And I'm glad you have joined us, Celine, and I look forward to our conversation because I really like the theme of your book, but I want to talk about other things as well. So tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of give us a pitch for your book right up front here.
Right up front. Well, thank you first, Ed, for having me. It's great to be there, and it's great to reconnect also
Yeah,
because it's been a while.
yeah,
And so, who I am a French entrepreneur. I'm working globally, but from France after living in a lot of different places in Asia, in the US, and working both in small and large companies and exploring. I've been exploring for about, I would say, 15 years now, the field of engagement, people mobilization, how to create collectives at work using different approaches, methodologies, philosophy that I believe work better with us, with all of us today, because our expectations have changed. We do no longer respond to the traditional management models, I would say, or approach, which are still unfortunately being used quite a lot across organizations, big or small, by the way. And I'm trying to open up perspectives and to show that there are other possible ways. And this really comes from experience. I do not come from academia, or it's not just theories or beautiful ideas. It's actually practice, and in practice, in different settings, different environments, across different cultures, etc., I have seen that those new approaches actually work. They produce amazing business results. They are great for people. They're great for organizations. So why don't we, do that more widely? And so I wrote a book to further explore that, to understand beyond the stories, beyond the experiences I had, why those things worked, those new ways of convening people around a shared goal. And so the book is named Dare to Unlead. It's a kind of respectful nod to the very famous Dare to Lead by Brené Brown. My point with adding the little un before lead was to express a sort of to express a challenge to the traditional, I would say, the idea we have of leadership, or the focus we put on leadership as if it was the solution to all our problems. We need more leadership, we need better leaders, we need this and that. But it's all more of the same. We're just handing over responsibility to a few people, and these few people are overburdened, overloaded. They will not save the rest of us. It's about That's why I suggest to unlead instead. So instead of concentrating responsibility on too few shoulders, on too few people, why don't we create a broader sense of responsibility that would be more distributed, more shared, and that can, through connections, networks, community of impact, communities of intent, deliver much better results for people and for our businesses. So that's the point. And I organized the book, as you know, around three main values, because I didn't want to create a new framework. I wanted to think in terms of big principles, large principles. So I chose values to drive my work.
And what are those three values?
So the three values, and you may find that funny because I'm French, as you know. The three values I chose are liberty, equality,
Uh,
and fraternity.
I love that. Oh, that sends a chill up my spine.
Oh, thank you.
Because, well, if you can marshal the inner leader of the French people, lead the world, we would have a better world. I'm convinced of that. I really like the French people. So, but
I'm not sure the French people are better at anything, at any of those things, uh, as compared to a lot of other people. I mean, to other
they can
nationalities
learn.
across the world. I don't think so. I think it's not really a matter of culture. However, these values culturally speak very much to me, of course, but I really believe they do make a lot of sense in the world of business and in the world of work, more generally, because liberty is something we have progressively, if you think about it, we have progressively removed that
Yeah,
from the workplace. We have integrated control very much in how people work, even self-imposed control, very much, but through all norms and processes and the extreme search for productivity and lean and all those stuff. Liberty is sort of being taken away from people. And the fact is that people are very bad robots, being turned into a sort of a robotized, executor of work is actually not great for the soul, but also for the business, for quality, etc. I've seen a lot of issues, a lot of problems happening in industrial setting, in manufacturing, when where the amount of standard operating procedures, for example, was phenomenal. So we were living in the illusion that everything, every possible problem, had a solution in the procedures, but it doesn't happen that way.
right.
There's always the unknown, unexpected, unintended consequences or whatever. But if you've turned people into if you've turned people into executors of work, into obedient servants of procedures, then they can't think anymore. They're not even they don't even have the idea of thinking
Right.
in a way. And so they're waiting for instructions, and if the instructions don't come or don't come fast enough, or if there's any issue, well, the whole system gets disrupted. The whole thing breaks down, and that's what happened in the environment I was in. So I believe that liberty is not, I mean, freedom is not an impediment. It does not slow down. It's not an equivalent to chaos. It is, on the contrary, an equivalent to responsibility and accountability and
Okay.
feeling more human at work, being able to make choices, being able to use our own judgment, all these are phenomenal enablers of good work. And so, but how do you inject more responsibility in the system? I think it starts with oneself. Because if a leader, a manager asks his or her team to, be more accountable, more responsible, and more autonomous, whatever, but he or she themselves just keep following orders and asking for reporting on everything and treating people like children, it will not work. It just
Yeah.
doesn't work. There's a fundamental incoherence here at the heart of the managerial relationship. So people just will not operate in the desired way. So it starts with oneself. How do we emancipate ourselves from the current system we are serving? I mean, there are great things in current systems
Yeah.
that we need to perpetuate, but there are also very toxic elements that we need to get rid of instead of just going with the flow. So that was for the first value.
You know, I totally agree with you, and I've seen this.
Mm,
Uh, my entry into the leadership world was back in the mid '80s, and when I started studying it, I realized I disagreed with almost everything I was reading. And
mhm,
I hated the heroic literature of the CEO because I thought
mm,
it really was diminished. It diminished the worker. It marginalized the manager. I mean, and and it really wasn't a true picture, but it was
mm,
all for the
mm.
the ego of a lot of very prominent CEOs. But
Exactly.
what I ended up seeing was that there was this
Mm,
breaking between authority and accountability, and
mm,
so the worker the authority for the worker to do good work. They were being responsible, was taken away from them.
Exactly.
But they are still accountable. And the person
Yes.
at the top had all the authority, but they had figured out a way to release themselves from being accountable.
Absolutely.
And so there's that break, and that's what I saw as one of the sources of the problems that we face. So what you're talking about is really, I think, really valuable and important.
That's a great idea. I hadn't thought about this disconnect between accountability and responsibility. I think it's great. I think it's a very rich idea.
This came to me after a talk that I gave in Nairobi in 2020, right before the pandemic, and this group of business leaders spoke to them, and their first question was, "What do we do about corruption in government and business?" And I said, I don't know. And I came home and I looked into it, and that's what I came to conclude was there's this breaking of authority and accountability, and it needs to be mutual authority and mutual accountability, so that this mutuality really is able to build something that is where the motivation for doing good work is really there at the heart of it all.
I love it. I really love it. So do you want to hear about the other two principles?
Yeah, I do want to hear about the other two. Yeah, I want to talk about all of them.
So the second principle is a principle of equality.
Yeah.
My point is that the world of work is handicapped by relationships of submission and domination. Because domination doesn't go without submission. They are both, they go together. You don't have authoritarian bosses if you do not allow them to be that way, right? So, and these relationships of domination and submission are extremely detrimental to accountability, as we said, but also to knowledge, to the circulation of information. Because in traditional systems, you have the top supposedly more clever, more knowledgeable than the bottom, and the top distributes information to the bottom, that going through a number of bottlenecks, a number of different levels. So the information gets poorer and poorer. It is slow, and the top decides which information should go to where, basically who should have access to which information. But the top cannot know everything. The top does not have a better perspective on things just because they are at the top. They just have a different perspective. Everyone has the best perspective, I would say, on things, on what needs to be done. What's important is to reconcile, to reconnect all those different perspectives together, so that the system becomes more able to handle its own diversity. Because if a system is sophisticated enough internally and able to understand its own sophistication, its own complexity, if instead of thinking in silos, in terms of roles, little perimeter, it is able to look at itself as a whole, then it becomes more able to handle the external complexity. So it's really important that information doesn't flow from top to bottom in a slow and cumbersome way, but that it flows everywhere, that the information gets available, that transparency becomes a feature by default rather than the exception. And so it's about equality in diversity. Instead of handling diversity as a set of different, putting people into boxes, basically, which again doesn't change anything to our current siloed systems. It's really about making a system able to handle, to embrace, to benefit from, to even look for its own diversity. So that is possible through the use of networks as technology, of course, the digital networks and so on, but also as operating principles. So working more in network, leveraging, I don't know, volunteer networks, all that kind of things. So that's for the second principle.
Do you see that there's a mechanism, the wrong word, a process for creating these networks inside a corporation?
There
How,
are,
how that can be
yeah.
built?
So there are many, many different ways, and I would say the most interesting part of that of this thing here is the process of creation. It's having people get together as a network and elaborating together how they will work as a network.
Uh-huh.
Because there are plenty of methodologies, and I mentioned one in my book, which is one I experienced, and I thought it was great, the dual operating model by John Cotter, which is a sort of an elegant way to implement or to understand the hierarchy philosophy described by John Husband as early as 24 years ago.
Yeah.
But this is just, I mean, so this is a way we can, go to the dual operating model and say, oh, we want to adopt that. But an even better way is to connect people, to look at the transversal networks that already exist in the company, and to connect them further, involve them into pieces of work, connect through a variety of activities, the top and the bottom and the middle and the internal and the external, etc. All sorts of anything that connects is great because it adds to the density, the richness of the social fabric of the system. And it is with a lively, dynamic, and dense social fabric that the company is able to share information super quickly and from one side to another, or top to bottom, or vice versa.
Does this make the company more resilient and
Yes,
more agile at the same time,
yes, and anti-fragile, I would say.
and anti-fragile? Yeah,
Yes, yeah, exactly.
I totally agree with you. But
Mm.
I, I,
So
I love the fact that this is what you come to, and you're
yeah.
offering this to
Mm.
people.
Mm.
So
So
to the
that
third.
was number two. So now number three, how do we keep the network together? How do we make sure that people will actually, stick together and work on a collective endeavor rather than uh, grow and move into every direction? The idea here is to develop fraternity or collegiality or a sense of willful togetherness. How do we make people want to stick together? How do we make them want to work together, come to work because they want to? They really feel that it's something that is meaningful, and it's meaningful for them, but also for them together, and that they are contributing to a bigger idea, to something that makes a difference. So I'm not talking here about purpose necessarily, because we've seen a lot of purpose washing across the years, and a beautiful purpose statement issued by the CEO or the communication department or a consultant will not make any difference, especially if, I mean, people are not stupid. They see what, and they pay attention to what the company does, not to what it says or what it says it does. So a statement is not what I'm talking about here, a purpose statement. I'm talking about the sort of ways to engage people. And I've learned a lot from the processes of social movements, the dynamics, I would say, rather than the process. The dynamics of social movements are really amazing because they they connect people, they bring people together in a very short amount of time, generally, but it can last for across decades. But it brings people, social movements bring people together for a common action without the need for an extensive bureaucracy or procedures or a human resource department or whatever. And I'm really interested in this. How do we motivate people to come because they want to, because they see they make a difference, and they want to do that with their colleagues? So it's a sense of um, yeah, fraternity, sense of willful togetherness. That's how I could best describe that. And there's a lot of different possibilities here, but certainly, I mean, none of them is triggered by traditional ways of working, which are very much about the have to, the sort of extreme pressure for productivity, sometimes toxic management. All this is completely detrimental to the fraternity I'm talking about.
So let me ask you this, because this is one of the questions I keep talking with people about. You know, if you were to take the typical organization and oversimplify it to the executive level, the middle management level, and the worker level, how do you see those three levels, which have distinctive different pressures on them,
Yes.
be able to work together in the way that you've described?
So I see, for example, the possibility of connecting those, of having them work together rather than working sequentially, you know, as what
Right.
happens all the time. So an example I give sometimes is this network of volunteers I have been involved in that gathered people from 7 different hierarchical levels for a year, and this network was or this group, this community was renewed every year. There was a call for volunteers, and we made sure to have people to integrate in that network or in that little community, people of different hierarchical levels, so that it is very clear that volunteers are not just the little people or the people, you know, lower down in the hierarchy, but they are every one of us. And it's about working in partnership across levels, across hierarchical levels. And that worked terrific. I mean, it was amazing to see that the partnership, the mutual recognition happening. And I remembered, I also mentioned this anecdote a few times from a client work that I was involved in after my time in the pharma world. I worked with other clients in all sorts of industries along the same principles because they really apply everywhere. And I remember after a few months of working with such a multi-layer community, we asked people involved what they thought about this work, and I remember the sentence from one operator saying about the leaders that he had worked with. He said, oh, that's amazing, because I realized this, our work made me realize that there were human beings like me.
About that.
Hey, how about that?
I like
And
that.
I'm sure that this new awareness was mutual. The leader had also realized that those people were not just operators or just, you know, some bunch of anonymous operators, but they were actually human beings with ideas, with emotions, with innovation capabilities, and so on.
I found that also to be true, and what I discovered
Mm,
was, and I have a phrase for this now. I discovered that particularly at the worker level,
mm,
particularly in places where people have long tenures,
mm,
that there is what I call a persistent residual culture of values
mm,
that persists because it resides in their relationships.
mm.
And that
Yeah.
in many respects, that culture that emerges from those relationships ends up defining the company, particularly where
Mm,
you have a kind of a revolving door at the very top level of the company. You
mm,
end up having this culture which is defined by the people who are they're the longest, you know,
yeah.
and it's and when I've shared that with people who are in that
Mm,
place, their sense of um, of affirmation and validation that comes from that has been very, very tangible,
mm,
very moving in many ways, because
mm,
it's like they've never been acknowledged, they've never been seen, they're invisible to people, and all of a sudden now they're not, by
mm,
and just by some guy that shows
mm,
up out of the blue who who asked some questions, and then all of a sudden saying, well, you all really have something really good here. I can see why you love this company.
Mm,
And and that's that's one of the things that I've seen,
mm.
which has been the most satisfying, is to see these people who actually love their company, even when the company treats them poorly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's very true. That's very true. Mm, mm.
So
And
let's,
so, maybe just to
yeah,
conclude with those three principles brought
yeah,
me to to sort of a, I wouldn't say it's a conclusion because the book is really very, very open, and it's more of a sort of the book itself is a network in a way, or a community. I've tried to honor as many people as possible among those who have inspired my own journey. So the
yeah.
book has around 700 footnotes
Oh,
or
yeah,
end notes. They're not at the foot of at the bottom of the page. They're at the
yeah,
end. But there's a tremendous amount of literature and references and sources, etc. So it can be a starting point if people are interested in leadership and or unleadership rather. And there's a lot of I made sure to have a lot of sources coming from female authors
yeah,
because I wanted to be like aligned with my own principles in what
right.
I do. I think coherence is of the utmost importance. So about 40% of references come from female authors. A lot of them come also from the non-Anglo-Saxon world, from the non-English speaking world. I also wanted to bring that cultural diversity into my references. So I hope it's helpful. And also there's the idea of leadership that I started with when I started researching for the book was, leadership is a set of individual uh, skills, right? And we can develop them or we can not care about them so much. But then across, as I wrote and researched more and more, I realized that, or at least that's my belief, leadership is a collective capacity. It emerges from the system, and you can change people. You can bring a whole new set of people if you work along those principles or those values of liberty, equality, and fraternity. You will anyway develop leadership in your organization for sure. It happens all the time.
So the people who are finding your book and are celebrating your book,
Mm.
and I'm certain there are many,
Mhm.
is there a generational distinctive there?
Hey, that's very interesting. That's a very good question. I don't think there's, I mean, people of different generations are attracted to it, but for different reasons.
Uh-huh.
Yes, I have found that the elder generations are interested, and I count myself in
Me
that.
too.
They're interested in it because they have seen changes in work. We have been part of those changes. There are things we accepted when we entered the world of work, or even still like 15 years ago, that we do not accept anymore.
Right.
Or not as easily today, and they want to understand why and what happened, and or I mean this. So this is a sort of um, companion, or a sort of a way to tell their own journey. Huh?
Yeah.
And as for the younger generations, I think they're interested in this as well because they sense that they're still young in their career, and they sense there's a problem with the world of work, with but more broadly with capitalism and with all our current systems. And they are they are very careful of not I mean, they don't want to to perpetuate that. They are looking for ways, they are looking for ideas and possibilities to, I would say, break the cycle, or to at least create more virtuous, more positive ways of interacting with the world of work. So this, I mean, a friend of mine said this book was a blueprint for the future, and she said it should be read by, young people in business schools or leadership schools, whatever. Um, I don't know. I hope it can help. It has tremendously helped me in the first place by adding to my knowledge and by creating really an opportunity to think deeply about those dynamics.
It sounds like an ideal book that both undergraduate and graduate business
Hmm?
programs should adopt.
Yeah, but it's not an easy book. Like there's no summary at the end of each chapter. There's no bullet points. There's no illustrations. I chose the more difficult route, but I knew what I was doing because the point is really to um, stop feeding the machine, feeding this system where people are just waiting for simple solutions. The world is complex. It will not be solved by simplistic solutions, by 3 steps to do this, or 4 ways to do that. Or I'm bringing values, and values are not directly um, cannot be directly operationalized by design. So
Mm-hmm.
it requires people to think in their own context and ideally together with other people, with their colleagues, with their peers. And it is from those discussions, brainstormings, etc., conversations that the great solutions will emerge. And they will emerge not just because they will be technically good, but because the process of designing things together, of working together, of recognizing our mutual value in this process, right, this ideation process, will have connected, will have contributed to the social fabric of the organization.
So it sounds like to me, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that what your book advocates, without saying it, is much more of a bottom up grassroots development of organizations in a new way. And that the difficulty is that everybody expects all change to begin at the top and
Yes.
percolate down. But in fact, all lasting change begins by an emergent process of creating something new
Mm.
that begins to become the solution to what's the other things that have gone on for years, generations, no
Mm.
longer works.
Yes.
Is that correct?
So it is partly correct. It is completely true that we are expecting change to come from the top, and we believe that if the top is not on board, things will not change. And it's a comfortable excuse for us not to do anything.
Right.
And it's great to have somebody to blame, the leader, the manager, the president, the whatever. That's what we do very well in France, by the way. We elect someone, and then right after we express all sorts of criticism against him. Uh, but but another thing I wanted to add is that grassroots alone doesn't work either.
Right.
And if we still consider an organization as a pyramid and just flip it as servant leadership used to do a few decades ago, we're not changing. We're still not changing enough our perspective on the system. It's really an ecosystem instead, and I think change can really start anywhere, but ideally it is supported and enabled by collaboration, by cross layer, cross function, cross everything, cross internal, external, but by cross everything collaboration. So the more diverse a team, a department, a project, whatever is, the better. And quite often we think of diversity in terms of function. So we'll have, oh yeah, well, marketing work with R&D and those kind of things, But when we do that, there's often a big blind spot, which is social diversity.
Mhm.
And we gather people from different functions for sure, but they are all educated, or they're all at the same level, more or less hierarchical level. And we forget completely the social diversity, which is extremely important, not just for, I mean, for the diversity of perspectives is hugely important and beneficial to projects, of course, but it's also the sense of togetherness, the sense of we all count. There are no there's not a certain group of people that counts more than the rest of us. We are all worthy of equal respect, and it's not just words, it shows in practice, in how we work together.
So describe for us how you work with people as in your profession. What is it that you do, and how? And I'm really asking this as a way of people finding you to say, "Hey, I'd like to work with Celine." That's
Yeah.
and what do you do, and then how do people find you?
So that's a lovely question. When I was still in the corporate world, my job had very much become the one of a community strategist, community facilitator, a motivator, and that kind of thing. So, and my last corporate job was head of innovation and engagement for quality. And that's another very, I think, important point, is that all this is closely tied to business results, to business outcomes. We're not doing this just to be nice, right?
Right.
Just to be human and to have a good time at work. No, we're doing this because this is the most valuable way, and the best way to actually increase our ROI. And so today, it has become my full-time job as an entrepreneur, and I do basically three main things. I do public speaking, I do training, and I do consulting. And consulting is about helping companies solve actual issues that they are facing, but helping them along those lines with all this experience and stories and references that I have been developing across my career. So speaking is great because it can inspire a group or a team, an organization. Training goes a little bit more in depth. It equips people with knowledge. But then the real work is where change happens, really. And so addressing real problems, whatever they are, but with clients is really what I love to do. So people can find me on my website, and I have also all sorts of presence on all sorts of social media. So LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram, YouTube. I've been a
Well,
bit active.
I will get all that, and we'll put it in the show notes so
Oh,
people
thank you.
can find you when they want to,
Yeah, thank you, Ed.
and where they can find your book. And this has been really great. I'm really encouraged by what you've done. Your book is very very parallel to the one I wrote that came out in 2018. I see many of the, I mean, all the principles you talked about are the things that I see, and I see that we're in this dramatic transition in the world.
Yeah.
That is going to bring a world that we're not used to. It's and
Yes.
so the things that you're talking about are the things that we need to be focused on, and because we're going to need it. So
Yes, we will. And not just at work, and not just in the world of business, but in society at large. I am worried by the level of stress, anger, and hate that I see around us, the level of division, and it's really we need to do absolutely the opposite. We need to bring people together into creating solutions for our future. Well, now is the time. We really need to get together. We cannot afford to hand over our state to some hero somewhere, and certainly not just a few politicians. We need
I agree.
to get roll our sleeves all together and involve everybody, because people resent very, very much not being involved, not being listened to, not being respected. And so the world of work is maybe one of the last spaces where we can actually reconnect people in diversity, across their diversity. So let's take this chance, because the world of work can save society very much, and all of us. So I'm happy we're in this together, Ed, and working for a
I
better
am
world.
too, and I'm excited about what's before you, and wish you every success. And so thank you for coming on, and I'm sure we'll have another conversation sometime in the future, because I don't think we're done talking about this. We're just kind of an introduction to all of this.
Thank you, Ed. Merci.
Thank you, and merci too. And everyone, thank you for watching. I hope this has been interesting and exciting and inspiring for you. I hope it leads you to rethink about some of the conclusions that you have about the way the world is functioning and what the opportunities are. I'm assuming that, Celine, that you have an optimistic view somewhat of the future, because I certainly do, because I believe by the mere fact that you have come up with this and you have been recognized by this award that you received for the best leadership book of last year is an indication that we're in a growing position in terms of the positive outlook of the future. So please subscribe, hit the like button, and even more so, please leave a comment or a question so that we may interact with you and be in conversation with you. And so until the next time we come together as the Eddie Network podcast, may all be well with you, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.